Hi, I'm Dr. Rebecca Mindock. I teach double reeds at the University of South Alabama, and today I'm going to give you some advice and tips, a mini lesson, if you will, on the middle school technical oboe etude for this year's Alabama All-State Band auditions. So this etude is fun because even though it's relatively short and it's just for solo oboe, it has an epic quality to it, primarily because of the way it ends. It ends like a little symphony. It seems so much grander than probably what it should be. So I think that's kind of fun about it, and I hope I can help you feel like that's fun too, especially as we explore all these fingerings and maybe get you to play a high E if you've never done that before. It's fun stuff. Okay, so this key signature is actually probably one of the best key signatures on the oboe. Most band kids tend to be very comfortable with flats and a little freaked out by sharps. So let me just tell you, if that's you, G, or its companion minor key, E minor, is a great key on the oboe, because if you think about it, you're playing F sharps, which is like right here. I mean, hello, that's one finger after the other. It means you don't have to worry about forked Fs or left Fs or any of that business, right? It's great. And then it also, even if you're used to B flats and stuff, think about this, G, A, B. Oh my gosh, that's like the easiest thing ever. Look, just one note after the other. It's glorious. What makes this a little trickier, the fact that it's an E minor, is if you don't know this already, there's 3 different kinds of minor scales. And this one is based on the melodic minor scale, which requires that the 6th and 7th scale degrees be raised a half step. And that's where all of those C sharps and D sharps come from. Those are less friendly. So I want to talk a little bit about how best to finger those for this. First of all, if you haven't been working with a teacher and you're just working with a method book and a fingering chart, it's very possible you might be fingering C sharp wrong. So let me just give you the correct fingering for C sharp. Sometimes you'll see it as just like a finger. Don't ever play your C sharp like this. This is usually out of tune and has a very different timbral quality than we want for the normal fingering. If you're used to this, the finger I'm about to give you is going to be significantly harder and you're going to be mad at me for a little bit, but trust me, this is what you want to do. So C sharp, half hole, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then the little round kid in the middle of that pinky cluster down there. This is the way that you should finger that C sharp that's in the middle of the staff, okay? D sharp is the same thing as E flat, right? So you guys probably all know your E flat fingering, which is the same thing that I just showed you, but this pinky down here. Oh, well, that's problematic, right? Unless you grease up your finger a little bit, that's really hard to slide back and forth between. So the good news is that there's another way to finger E flat and D sharp on the left, and it's this little guy on the inside who's right underneath your A flat key, okay? So you can go C sharp, D sharp. Those are both half whole notes, no octave key. So the only thing you're changing is your pinkies. If you've never used that fingering before, spend some time playing those 2 notes back and forth and getting used to them, okay? I will put an L in my music over top of a D sharp that I need to play on the left to remind me to play it that way. You'll probably remember in that second measure because the note before it is the C sharp and you'll be out of other options. But when the D sharp happens first, like in the second line, you'll appreciate that reminder because you may automatically go where you expect it to go and then, oh, I can't get to my C sharp now. So think about that and just keep in mind that it is a half whole note. Sometimes it can be really easy as you're worrying about putting your pinky down to leave your octave key on. The other thing to watch out for if you have trouble with your D sharp / left E flat, if you play with your hands too tilted up, I call this flute hands. Because if you were a flute player, we often do that because we have to put it over here. If you play oboe with the flute hands, then it's really hard to reach that key. Not happening. And then when you get there, you often end up sliding all of these fingers off of your keys. And they open up and they vent. And the key doesn't work. You get that beautiful squeaky sound. I've heard that so many times from poor young oboists. So the trick is, rotate your hand down. You don't need it up here. Yeah, there's a key, but guess what? It's a long key. You can get it down here. What a beautiful design. Someone knew what they were doing. So make sure that you keep your hands straight, and that way you'll be able to reach over there, okay? And that you won't have to shift everything. If you find that happening, just think about your placement of these 3 fingers and trying to find a way that you can reach that left D sharp key without moving them. And it may take some retraining, especially if this is your habit. You're going to want to do it. You're gonna catch yourself. Okay, so that's step one, getting used to your left D sharp. And then once you have it, you're basically just playing the scales and the arpeggios over and over again throughout this, okay? There's a high D on the second line. I wanna just talk about that fingering because sometimes it has the wrong fingerings in fingering charts too. And it can be really out of tune. So it's half whole, 2, 3. Note that I have no octave keys of any kind, no second or first, okay? And then you desperately need this key that you use to play your low C, which I will from now on call the C key. You need that on there. Makes a big difference if it's not on, okay? But now that can often be kind of sharp, just like this. So you want to add something else on your right hand to take the pitch down. You have choices here. The one I recommend the most is your middle finger. Hear that it makes a difference. You could also do your third finger or just the outside of your third finger if you have an oboe like mine that has a little hole there. But this is usually the best one for getting that pitch down, okay? It's also very easy for that note to not come out right. So you want to make sure that you get enough reed in your mouth, but not so much that you can't control it anymore. And you want to make sure that you have a nice focused, clear embouchure, that you're pushing a little bit outward with the kind of the corners of your mouth, like that, so that you're controlling the reed as best you can and making sure that opening is not too wide. If it's too wide, you get those beautiful noises, but when it's in just the right spot, you get that guy, okay? So spend some time getting used to your high D. It's a particularly ornery note on the oboe, even for people who've been playing for a long time. And then, let's talk about that high E fingering. So you may say, hey, Dr. Mindock, but there's another E on there. I'll just play the lower one. It's fine. I really don't need to learn the high one. But it's so much more fun to play the high one. And here's my thoughts on this. If you've only been playing the oboe for a few months and you're still developing your embouchure and getting used to everything, don't play the high E yet. But if you've been playing for like a year or so, if you're a 7th or 8th grader and you started in 6th grade, it's time. Because I think a lot of students avoid that high register thinking, oh, I'm too young to play it, I don't need to, it doesn't come up. And then you've been playing the oboe for 5, 6, who knows how many more long years, and you haven't learned those high notes, and then they come up. And everything else is really fluent, and you don't know what you're doing up there. And so you forget the fingerings, and you freak out, and then you start developing a complex about them, and it's bad. So the more experiences you can have with those high notes now, while you're still getting used to everything, then the less scary they'll be when you get there, and the more experience you'll have to draw on when you actually need them. So this is the perfect time to learn your high E. Now, high E has a lot of different ways it can be fingered, so let's talk about this. The nice thing about it in this context is that it's all by itself. There's rests all around it, so you don't have to worry about where you're coming from. So you want your first octave key on, okay? You want your half hole open. This is the only time you're allowed to do this, by the way. This is otherwise a cardinal sin, to have your half hole open and your octave key on at the same time. In the low octave, don't do that. Here it's okay. So octave key, first finger, second finger, third finger. On your right hand, 2 and 3. Okay, now here's where it gets exciting. You want to have an A flat key and an E flat key open. Okay, so you have, this is probably what you usually use to play your A flat, and this is what you probably use to play your E flat. You can do that. You can put both those on. You could also get your A flat over here. Did you know you had that? It's right there if you ever need it. So you can get A flat and E flat. I call this the hook'em horns fingering. Camera, there we go. Or you can mash them both down at the same time with your pinky if you've got a really big pinky. I don't. I hate this fingering. But a lot of people love this because then you're only using one finger to get 2 keys. So if you can do that, more power to you. If this is really sharp for you, which it kind of is for me, you could also, instead of getting the E flat key, you get an A flat key on and you can press your low B key. And that'll take the pitch down. But on some oboes, that's too flat. So just remember, octave key, half hole 2, 3, 2, 3, and some combination of an A flat and an E flat, okay? And then same kind of things we talked about with the high D, making sure that you're supporting, controlling the reed with the corners of your embouchure, lots of air. So make sure the reed's not too open. Also make sure you're not closing it down. Don't bite, don't use your jaw, because then it won't work at all. Cool? So you got lots of time to set that up. And it'll be epic and exciting for you. I'll just mention low B too as often a problem note, and just to make sure we're all cool on fingering, since sometimes some oboes don't have all the keys and that might throw some people off. So if you have an oboe like mine, that low B key is right here. not over here. This is B flat, right? If you don't have an oboe like mine and you only have 2 keys over here, it's the furthest one over is your low B. And for a low B, you want to make sure everything is closed up on the horn. You don't have any leaking keys, and you want to have your embouchure as forward as possible and your jaw nice and down. Like that. I often think of a low B as being out in front of my face. Last thing I'm going to say is the style in this matters, the staccatos. Do, 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 do. Don't be tempted to tongue stop your notes. Ew, that. Think about your air having a little bounce and each note ending with an H. Ta, 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 like that. Cool. If you have questions, concerns, issues, would like a longer, less mini-sized lesson on any of this material, just shoot me an email and I would be happy to help you. In the meantime, happy practicing and good luck.